Hello and welcome to teleSUR English. Tonight in a special show, we are just one day away from Venezuela's presidential election and the nation is all set for an important moment. In teleSUR English, we are going to be bringing you everything you need to know to understand what is going on in this South American country. My name is Belén de los Santos and this is Venezuela Decides 2024. Let's now look at the main aspects of the presidential election in Venezuela.
Según datos del Consejo Nacional Electoral,
according to data from the National Electoral Council, a total of 21,620,705 Venezuelans are eligible to vote in the presidential elections this July 28th. The Electoral Authority identified more than 228,000 overseas voters who will exercise their right to vote in 106 cities, being Spain and Colombia the countries with more voters. Guarantee an efficient and secure electoral process, a voting process that will have national observers as well as international oversight. The CNE has also implemented security and logistic mechanisms to ensure the transparency of the vote and the democratic exercise. Likewise, in order to carry out an election, the CNE sets a minimum of 13 audits, which could increase after agreements between the technicians of the political organizations and the electoral body. There are 10 presidential candidates represented in 38 political parties. 8 of them signed an agreement to recognize the results of the July 28th elections.
And after this first information, we begin the analysis this day before the election as we welcome our special envoy Yunus Soner, who is at the moment in our studios in Caracas, Venezuela. Hello, Yunus. It's a pleasure to have you with us. So, Yunus, the whole world is closely following what will happen.
How are you? A warm welcome from Caracas to all our viewers over Latin America.
Exactly. So we were saying that the whole world is waiting to see what happens tomorrow in Venezuela. Tell us, how is the climate in Caracas just one day away from the election?
Well, the climate here in Caracas couldn't be more relaxed, actually. I have been taking a walk through different parts of the city. People are attending their daily businesses. It's a very nice weather today. There was no rain. So people are attending, they are going shopping, but they're shopping as they regularly do. They are having fun, they are going to work. There is no sign at all of any kind of anxiety. There is no panicky shoppings. There is no one looking behind himself. There is no tension and no afraidness at all, which is really incredible for me coming from Turkey. I think I have never seen such a relaxed atmosphere before in elections.
And how will tomorrow day develop? Tell us, and when should we know something about the official results?
Well, the day will start early here. It will start at 6 o'clock in the morning when the voting centers will open, so that citizens can cast their vote if they wish so very, very early in the morning. And the voting centers and the ballot boxes will be open until 6 o'clock in the afternoon. Here, a small addition. The voting is a constitutional right here in Venezuela. That means that should there be at any voting center still a queue, people waiting outside to cast their votes, then they will allow to cast their votes, although the clock has passed 6 o'clock. So because this is their citizens' right, so they will anyhow have the chance, if there's a line, as I said, to cast their votes. Regarding the election results, that's an interesting, important point that our viewers should know. Here in Venezuela, the only authority supervising the elections is the National Electoral Council. the CNE in its initials in Spanish. And this is the institution that counts the votes, that supervises the election, and this is the only institution that will announce election results. No other institution or person or entity is allowed, is permitted to announce any results. Actually, the Attorney General emphasized this week again. He said no one else can announce results except the National Electoral Authority. That would be a crime. So when do we expect the results? Well, that is a little bit a procedure. As I said, at 6 o'clock, the voting centers close as far as there's no waiting line in front of them. And then the voting process begins. And then the National Electoral Council announces the results when they are cleared. That is, when one candidate has such a lead that no other can catch up to him anymore. So that's the point. We expect, like when approximately, this is by experience, not a legal measure, when 95% or so of the votes have been counted, then comes, with a little delay, the announcement, the official announcement by the National Electoral Council. And in addition to that, they make only one announcement. So the results that they announce, these are the final results. They are not intermediate results. So to repeat it once again, there is no exit polls here in Venezuela. There is no in-between results like 10% of the votes counted or certain federal states announcing votes. No, there is one institution that is permitted to announce results, that is the one that is counting them, actually, the votes, and this is the National Electoral Council, and that we expect to happen late in the night.
Thank you, Yunus, for joining us at this edition of Venezuela Decides. That was really clear to help us better understand what is going to be happening tomorrow. What are we supposed to expect? It's been a pleasure to have you with us. That was Yunus Soner, teleSUR Special Envoy in Caracas. And we've been talking about Election Day. Let's get to learn a bit more about how the election system in Venezuela works in the following material. Let's see.
The Venezuelan electoral system is characterized by being an automated and auditable process that guarantees that the vote is direct and secret. Firstly, the voter must present a valid or expired identity document to verify his or her data in the integrated authentication system. This is a machine that, by means of the voter fingerprint and data, will certify his or her identity and allow him to vote. Secondly, the citizen must go to the voting machine where he or she will select the candidate of his choice, and then the citizen will press the vote button on the screen, after which the system will issue a voting receipt on the citizen's selection. Thirdly, the voter must check that the voting slip is in accordance with his or her choice, then fold it and place it in the ballot box. Finally, the voter must affix his or her signature and fingerprint to the voting booklet. This is a list of all voters with the right to vote in that polling center. It is important to highlight that the Electoral Council is the only governing body authorized to issue election day progress reports, with guarantees of reliability, impartiality, transparency, and efficiency.
And as we continue to learn more about the Venezuelan electoral process, let's see some extra key details. In 2004, Venezuela became the first country to have a national election with machines that print out the voting slip, and in 2012, it became the first country with a voter biometric identification system. Moreover, the election process is automated and auditable in all stages, and the relative majority of affirmative votes turns out valid in a single round of voting. Nowadays, there are 21,392,464 Venezuelans qualified to vote, and the vote is non-binding, universal, secret, and direct. On the other hand, the Venezuelans abroad qualified to vote are the ones with legal residence in the country that they live in. In addition, know that the registration in the Permanent Voters Registry is voluntary. Also, to vote in Venezuela, the citizens must be more than 30 years old be Venezuelan by birth and not hold any other nationality. They can't be subject to political disqualification or civil interdiction either. The presidential term is 6 years period with the possibility of being re-elected. And now, with only 1 day to go before polling stations open, Venezuela is in electoral silence. More than 600 experts in electoral processes are already in the country. Our correspondent Adriana Sivori has the details.
The electoral power of Venezuela, with national and international observers, about to enter the official welcome event.
The next elections will be exemplary for the region.
This affirms the former president of Colombia, one of the guests invited to accompany the Venezuelan electoral process.
We had the opportunity to meet with some people, candidates. I prefer to keep the names confidential. Also, with the United Nations. We have had meetings with the PSUV. And we hope to meet with the president. We come in goodwill, so that it goes well. We will make a call for everyone to accept the results of next Sunday.
This affirms the former president of Colombia, one of the guests invited to accompany the Venezuelan electoral process.
So that we can guarantee the absolute will of the Venezuelan people.
And now that the campaign is over, the candidates show in social networks their agenda. The presidential aspirants have held meetings with different representatives of international electoral expert organizations. Here, a delegation from Latin American countries, couple, with the candidate of the Democratic Action opposition.
We have ratified our conviction that this electoral process will culminate on July 28th in peace. Nothing more important than peace.
The candidate of the Arepa Digital Party reiterated a request to the National Electoral Council.
We propose an open border.
However, the law indicates that in each election, the armed forces must establish strict border control, from 2 days before voting day until 1 day after. While all this was going on, the Chavista candidate, in his functions as head of state inaugurating a public hospital.
We go now for a first short break, but before we leave you with some special images of Caracas from El Silencio, where the National Electoral Council is located, hours ahead of a key moment. Enjoy, and we'll be right back. Don't go away. Welcome back to Venezuela Decides 2024 as we continue analyzing the upcoming election in the country. We go now to our special envoy in Venezuela, Brian Meir, who also has the latest news just hours before voting begins in the nation. Let's see.
Well, as of 8 o'clock tonight, there's only 10 hours left until Venezuela's presidential elections tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning, when over 21 million voters are invited to come out and choose who the next president will be for the next 6 years. Today was the second day of after the official campaign season ended, so a lot of special rules and laws have come into effect that will only end after voting ends tomorrow. For example, there's been no sale of alcoholic beverages since midnight on Thursday night. Also, newspapers, radio stations, and television stations have to be very careful about what they say regarding candidates during this period, so that it doesn't look like they're supporting one candidate over another. There's strict rules about that as well. 188,000 people have been deployed to guarantee the security of the thousands of voting centers across the country and the electronic voting machines. Among these 188,000 people, as part of Plan Republic, an operation coordinated by the military, include officers and members of the military, police officers, and fire department workers. So I've talked to people on the streets today. I was out, a lot of people were out shopping. Saturday's a traditional day for that. Everyone was just going about their normal business. Lots of work for the moto taxis, and the app drivers, bringing people with shopping bags back from the stores. And a couple of people I talked to just said that they just hope, and they're confident, in fact, that the elections will go smoothly, they'll be fair and transparent, which is the promise that the National Electoral Committee has made to the population. And I heard confidence in the electoral system, not just from supporters of the incumbent president, but from people who said they were voting for people from the opposition. So the clock's running out. There's only hours left until voting begins. All eyes turn on Venezuela tomorrow for the 2024 presidential elections.
And one of the key factors to understand Venezuela's past, present and future have been the unilateral and coercive sanctions applied to the people of the South American nation, which have generated an unprecedented economic impact against the productive sector and the economic activity of the South American country. Today, ahead of these elections, this constitutes a decisive element that needs to be present in any thorough analysis of Venezuela's development. Let's learn more about them in the following piece.
In 2015, Barack Obama signed an executive order declaring the country as an unusual and extraordinary threat to the U.S. national security and foreign policy. In 2017, Donald Trump intensified the coercive measures, imposing more than 930 sanctions against the Venezuelan people. The Obama decree ordered the freezing of bank accounts and the confiscation of Venezuelan gold reserves deposited in international banks, resulting in more than $30 billion stolen in U.S. and U.K. operations. In 2019, a new executive order by the U.S. sanctioned Venezuela's oil exports and took away one of the country's main assets in foreign territory, the Citgo refinery, a state subsidiary of the oil company PDVSA. The national economy stopped generating more than $640 billion, causing a 99% drop in foreign exchange earnings. The sanctions caused severe damages to the national public health system. As a result, 40,000 people died due to lack of treatment, 80,000 HIV patients lost access to antiretrovirals, 16,000 were left without cancer treatment, and nearly 4 million diabetic and hypertensive patients lost access to medication as the United States prevented Venezuela from purchasing medical supplies. Also with this measure, dozens of shipping companies were sanctioned to prevent the distribution of food and agricultural products necessary for industry. Despite the unilateral sanctions imposed by the United States in the last 9 years and the blockade of financial assets, Venezuela is set to become, in 2024, one of the countries with the highest gross domestic product growth in Latin America and the Caribbean.
And in this context, militants all over the country have increased their efforts ahead of this election day that is about to take place in defense of the popular conquests that have been solidified since the beginning of the 21st century. Let's learn more about this in the following report.
In every area of the national life, the legacy of Hugo Chavezs can be felt explicitly.
I can't imagine Venezuela if not great.
Chavez's legacy dates back to 1999 with the approval of a new constitution that refounded the republic and established the pillars for a new Bolivarian national project.
So that the new republic has a new Magna Carta adequate to the new times, I swear it.
Once the path for the defense of the national interest and the fight against neoliberalism has been reconstructed, Chavezs follows the path of the socialism of the 21st century, where to the actions of the historical struggles of the working class in the 20th century, specific elements of the current Venezuelan and Latin American reality are added, such as a participative and leading democracy, inclusion of diverse sectors, and a mysticism based on ancestral traditions.
And Chavez is no longer only me, young girl. You are Chavez too.
With the Constitution as a coordinate map to be followed, all the planning and action areas of the revolution currently bear Chavez's imprint. In domestic and foreign policy, in the military sector and integral security, in the media, communication, cultural and economic areas. Commander Hugo Chavezs gave life to a new notion of homeland that had its birthmark in April 2002, with the defeat of a coup d'etat orchestrated by the oligarchy, now the so-called surnames, and financed by the United States. Chavezs set a method of inclusion with the missions and great missions, a prime example of political action that was accompanied by the guarantee of social rights. The redistribution of wealth achieved through oil revenues and the strengthening of popular power and national peace.
We continue in Venezuela Decides, and now let's welcome Danny Sha, Latin America and Caribbean Studies professor at the City University of New York and International Affairs analyst. Welcome, Danny Sha. Can you hear us? It's a pleasure to have you here.
Most sophisticated interview I've ever done.
So, Professor Sha, tell us your first views about this electoral process that we are about to have right now. Well, the whole world is watching Venezuela, and of course, a lot is at stake. What is your view on why is this such a relevant election?
When they start, I'm going to go like this.
Danny, can you hear us? We might have some technical difficulties, but we'll be back with Danny Sha. Now let's continue.
You can watch if you want, of course.
Let's continue with some extra information as we try to get back in touch with Professor Sha about his analysis on this important event. And also, let's now review some comparative data which shows us how the Bolivarian revolution has advanced in policies of expansion and access to public higher education compared to the Fourth Republic. During the period of the Fourth Republic, 1961-1999, the public and private university sector had a total of 785,285 students in 1998. By 2008, after 10 years of revolution, the public and private universities had a total of 2,109,331 students. It is observed that the public university sector had an exponential growth of approximately 220% compared to the private sector, which in 10 years did not reach 50% growth. In the Fifth Republic, for the year 2008, there were 180 university institutions, surpassing the number of public institutions to private. Currently, with the arrival of the Bolivarian Revolution, there is an incorporation of indigenous students with disabilities. Also, the private social sector of freedom was included by the Bolivarian Revolution in 2010, and 3,617 of the 28,993 people serving as prisoners were studying at the university. And however difficult the last few years might have been, journalists and observers who have traveled to Venezuela to witness Sunday's election have highlighted the tranquility with which the citizens are expecting this process. Let's see.
Tranquility that is breathed in Venezuela a few hours prior to the elections is another one of the achievements of the Venezuelan people, and no, they do not want to lose it. It is calm. I think we are already used to voting process. We do our duty. This is no longer the same as years ago, many years ago, when people used to shop impulsively. Something is going to happen, they used to say. No, it is something we have already overcome. Although media pressure, foreign interference and financial sanctions continue, the reactivation is evident, and not only the economic one. Artist Felipe Garcia knows it. He continues to occupy the spaces with his murals, and the sun is present in his new works.
It was very difficult at some point, even due to the depressive state that practically everyone was in. Today it is not like that. Today the results have been coming little by little, and also with the hope that this is the way to go.
Even the businessmen are aware. At the Undercover Sanctions Forum held in April, they revealed an open secret. The financial coercion measures forced them to look for trade alternatives that represented up to 30% more costs in raw materials or final products.
That produces inflation and consequently affects all Venezuelans, all consumers. The sanctions do not really affect politicians. They have never affected politicians.
Even if it served for something, time will tell. To strengthen national production, entrepreneurship, and deepen the patriotic sense of independence that today gives certainty to the people not to surrender.
There is a greater consumption, people are consuming. At this moment people are happy and we see that there is flawlessness. Capital is being moved and that is what we want. We continue betting on Venezuela.
And the bet is not only economic. Although the blockade also affects the cultural industry and, for example, books cannot be neither imported or exported, the Venezuela Book Fair was a success and people went massively. I have had to see that as if, well, this was my money to do the weekly market. But I want the book so much that I will solve the food issue. There is an intention to continue investigating in culture. And in public activities, the rumba, the gathering, Caracas is refurbished, clean. La Guaira, the coastal border, proudly shows off the beauty of its colonial streets. The economy is reactivated, yes, but also is the enthusiasm. Venezuelans walk with their heads held high. We made it, they seem to say at every step. I remember 2017 and 2014 very well. I remember times when I spent months without leaving the comforts that I had at home. I won't leave my little block because from there might be fire out there. There might be danger. Do you know what I mean? And danger caused by people who do not have very good intentions. Look how beautifully we are living at this moment. People working, people reinventing themselves, people building, which is what we have to aim at keeping it that way, and to keep it going forward.
Y en eso hay total acuerdo. Ganó la mayoría. Paola Drachnik, teleSUR, Venezuela.
And now we take a final short break, but before we'll leave you with this special material from our social media, we'll be back. Stay with us. welcome back to Venezuela Decides 2024. And now we welcome Danny Sha, Latin American and Caribbean Studies professor at the City University of New York and international affairs analyst. Welcome, Professor Sha. How are you?
Good evening, Belen. Doing very well, thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you with us. And now, Professor Sha, the eyes of the world seem to be on Venezuela ahead of this election, and that is exactly why it is so important to try to give a comprehensive read on what is at stake here. What is your view on the relevance of tomorrow's election?
Yes, Belen, and the people of the United States should know that this election is important for them as well. With the war in Ukraine, gas prices have skyrocketed. Venezuela is one of the biggest oil markets in the world, and they've been able to export their oil. That'll lower gas prices for everyday Americans. Inflation has been a big issue here, and inflation has been a big issue in Venezuela. I don't think a lot of people in the United States realize that there has been a 2-decade long war on the Venezuelan people, on their economy, where both the Democrats and Republicans have expressed nothing but hostility for Venezuelan democracy and the Venezuelan leadership. So within about 24 hours, we should know if Nicolas Maduro from the PSUV Socialist Party will be the next president, or if the opposition candidate Edmundo Gonzalez will be the next president of Venezuela.
And Professor Sha, you were just talking about the possible repercussions of this election and also the role that the U.S. has played in the past years. So what is your read on what would be the impact of the possible, like the two options you just gave, right? The officialists winning or the opposition. How would that impact the economy, the productive model, the situation that Venezuelans are living now?
It'll have a huge impact if the opposition candidate Edmundo Gonzalez wins, and the United States government has pumped some $50 million behind Corina Machado and now Edmundo Gonzalez. And the American people are left to wonder, how can they have all this money to interfere in Venezuelan democracy, all this money to send to Israel to carry out a horrific war on the people of Palestine, and of course, hundreds of billions of dollars sent for this proxy war in Ukraine against Russia. That's money that we need right here at home. So I think one of the most important slogans for the American people to recognize is no interference in Venezuela's democracy, no interference in any people's democracy across the world. And it's been U.S. interference. It's been U.S. government sanctions that have forced some 7.8 million Venezuelans to leave their homeland since 2014, when Barack Obama enacted these sanctions. And who does the United States think they are? You would think they were sanctioned by God, or I'm not sure who, when they wage these economic wars, whether it's on the people of Cuba or the people of Zimbabwe or Russia or China. The point of the matter is that the U.S. has no right to interfere in other people's systems. So we hope that tomorrow the United States allows the 30 million people of Venezuela to decide for themselves.
And now, Danny, the U.S., as you were commenting, has a long history of different forms of interference with this. And this election process in particular has been marked by the lifting and putting back of sanctions, also comments on international media and along, etc. How do you value the role of the U.S., not only in Venezuela, but in the region in this context? You were talking about also its interference with the situation, the genocide in Gaza. What is happening with the U.S. on the current state of the country and its interference in current Latin America?
Right now, there's actually a division between some of the biggest oil companies. Chevron wants Nicolas Maduro to go. Exxon has been in dialogue with Maduro. I think the Wall Street Journal itself published an article that says it all. They think that the continuity of the PSUV and Maduro brings stability to Venezuela, to U.S.-Venezuela relations. I've talked to several finance guys and economists, and they think that Gonzalez victory could be disastrous for the Venezuelan economy. The most important thing is that the Venezuelans can continue to build multipolar relationships with countries across the world, and hopefully with the United States people as well. We haven't heard one positive word about Venezuela in about 26 years since Hugo Chavezs won the elections in 1998. And we've been told so many negative things about Venezuela, but this has been decontextualized, and we've never been told that it is our governments, whether Republican or Democrat, really two wings of the same vulture that represents oligarchical interests that have waged this war, not just on Venezuela, but on Nicaragua, on Bolivia, on Cuba, on any country that has tried to forge their own way forward. So if we here in the United States truly believe in our Constitution, and if we believe in sovereignty, how important to respect the sovereignty of other people. Tomorrow is an extremely important day for Venezuela. Really the future of energy and the oil markets in South America depend on what happens tomorrow in Venezuela.
Okay, so clearly you were talking about the misinformation or the different views that have been spread around about what's happening in Venezuela. Definitely, it's been hard to understand from an international perspective, and that is why we are trying every day to do an effort to try to explain, besides what mainstream media has been saying, talking, sometimes with misinformation that is very easily confronted. What do you think about the role the media is playing? Why is it playing that role? Why with certain Latin American projects in particular, and what can we do to confront that?
That's a great question, Belen. Why does the corporate mainstream media have this ongoing war against Venezuela? It's not the Venezuelan people's fault that they have such a rich country, one of the biggest oil supplies in all of the world. But if you listen and read the Wall Street Journal and MSNBC and the New York Times and Fox News, it's an informational war, it's a media war against Venezuela. They're saying that it's the typical vilification campaign against President Nicolas Maduro. They're trying to misquote him, saying that he's not going to respect the democratic results. But the Venezuelans have had 2 decades plus of democratic free elections that Washington and Brussels, the European Union, and the U.S. government have never respected Venezuelan democracy. And it would be as if somebody here in my own neighborhood in New York City were to invade into my house and steal what was mine. The Venezuelans are not to be blamed because they stood up in defense of their own sovereignty. What type of sovereignty? Political sovereignty, diplomatic sovereignty, and most importantly, economic sovereignty, trying to put their oil economy to work for their people. So it's clear that the corporate media does not speak for us, for the American people. We don't see Venezuela as an enemy. What has Venezuela ever done to us? They're not responsible for the inflation and the homelessness and the inequality and the lack of democracy that we have in our country. How can the U.S. pretend to sermonize and dictate to other countries what democracy is when right here we still have the Electoral College, which none of us, even professors, understand? How is it not by popular vote? How many votes here in the United States has one candidate actually achieved a higher numerical tally, only to be told that in the Electoral College they lost? So the United States and the politicians here should focus on the lack of democracy in the United States. The democracy here is really by the rich and for the rich. There was a study, a very interesting study that came out that only 11% of the people in the United States even trust the mainstream media. So I think that's very telling, and I think the United States can see through so much of this corporate propaganda against Venezuela.
Thank you, Danny, for your inputs in this special program, Venezuela Decides 2024. That was Professor Danny Sha, Latin America and Caribbean Studies specialist, and also international analyst that we had here in Venezuela Decides.
Okay,
and that was That was this episode of Venezuela Decides 2024. We will see you tomorrow for a special day. This is Belén de los Santos. See you next time.